The F-Type. It's not only a sports car, it's a Jaguar sports car. The difference is important. Don't expect a racetrack refugee, but don't expect a luxury GT either, the kind of car sporting fans of the brand previously had so often to be satisfied with. Think instead of what an Austin Healey or a Triumph TR6 might be like, reinterpreted for the modern era. A coupe, or as in this case a roadster, designed very much for the road. A machine you can't help but want to drive, and drive hard. That's more than ever what an F-Type can be, thanks to widespread improvements that have broadened its appeal.
What do you expect a Jaguar sports car to be? Charismatic, memorable, classically elegant? Well, the company's F-Type model claims all these attributes. It's a little bit special. And it's changed quite a bit since we first saw this convertible version back in 2013. First with the launch of an alternative fixed top coupe body style in 2014, then with the announcement of manual transmission and all-wheel drive a year later. A frantic flagship SVR V8 derivative arrived in 2015 with supercar style performance just before the introduction of a minor facelift, an uprated V6 engine, and perhaps most significantly in mid-2017, an entry-level four-cylinder variant. In other words, if you're in the market for that sports car you've always promised yourself and you haven't got recent experience of this F-Type, it might be time to revisit what's on offer here. This, remember, was a car over half a century in the making. At the time of its original launch, it had been that long since we'd seen a proper Jaguar sports car, a successor to the iconic C, D and E-type models that defined this market in the 50s and 60s. In those days, the Coventry company was a brand known for true driver's cars, rather than the luxurious GT models more familiar from the modern era. Think of people's perception of Porsche today. Back then, you bought a Jag for that kind of thing. Might you do so again today? Well, the F-Type claims to be better equipped than ever to persuade those in any doubt. A modern era Jaguar ready to take on sporting class leaders of the caliber of Porsche's 718 series and 911 models. Can one single design really do that? Well, so far we've had our doubts, and sure enough, earlier versions of this car never sold in the kind of numbers high as to really trouble the premium German brands. This revised model, though, has revitalised its appeal, and if you're torn between a top sports car and a junior level supercar, it could offer the perfect package. Let's put this convertible version to the test. True sports car, a real sports car, should pump the blood around a little faster long before the pedal hits the metal. This one does. It looks poised and ready, even when it's standing still. Drive me, it seems to say, as you approach and the door handle springs out to greet you. Start me, it seems to shout once you're enveloped in the figure-hugging sports seats and angled towards that little starter button. Rev me, it seems to insist as you fire the engine and a spectacular set of aural fireworks begin. And in this convertible F-Type, of course, you can hear those even better. Even if, like us, you usually like your automotive sound effects to come from the engine rather than as here from the tailpipes at the back, you'll have to admit that this car does hum an addictive tune. For driver involvement, it really had to be that way because the petrol power plants on offer aren't of the Porsche high revving kind, and they weren't originally developed for sports car use. There are now 3 basic units on offer, the original all-supercharged V6 and V8 petrol lineup having been joined by an entry-level 4-cylinder 2-litre turbo variant in mid-2017. Much of the recent media coverage on this car has centred on this downsized engine, but the reality is that most buyers continue to prefer the power plant sitting at the heart of the range, the supercharged 3-litre V6 that we're trying here. So before talking about whether or not it's worth countenancing the idea of a luxury Jaguar sports car with 4-cylinder power, let's start by focusing on what we've actually got in this instance. Now we've gone for this 6-cylinder unit in its 380 PS state of tune, but Jaguar also offers it with 340 PS, and at the launch of this facelifted model for model year 2017, the company additionally added in a short production run sport model with engine software tweaked to boost the total output to a meaty 400 PS. Now, whatever your preference, one of the advantages of going for a V6 in this car is the wider range of engineering spec options you'll get. With a base 4-cylinder model or with a top V8, you're offered no choice when it comes to the transmission and drive layout. With a 3-litre F-Type though, a manual stick shift's available as a classic alternative to the quick shift 8-speed auto gearbox that almost all customers do prefer. And if you do go for an auto, then there's the option of all-wheel drive, and that's a torque-on-demand system that works with a clever IDD, Intelligent Driveline Dynamics strategy, to exploit the maximum performance potential of all that extra traction while still keeping this car's natural rear-wheel driven character. In fact, your all-wheel drive F-Type will always direct power to its rear wheels unless the IDD system detects a loss of traction and demands a proportion of that torque be directed frontwards. On the subject of traction, the more powerful variants that are fitted with the quick shift box get a dynamic launch mode as standard, so you can indulge in Grand Prix style starts, the electronics firing you up the road in really addictive fashion. Whatever your choice of supercharged variant, the major draw here is, of course, the sound. Now, we've already referenced the fact that switching from the coupe to this convertible version so you can drive roof down makes that melody even easier to enjoy. But even if you do raise the fabric top, which is possible on the move at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour, you still get quite a sense of automotive theatre when the road opens up, and you can't resist the delicious prospect of being able to drop a gear and gun the throttle like this. Now do that, and as you can hear, a howling crescendo of aural excitement is unleashed as the horizon spools towards you on fast forward. Now, for the best effect, you'll need to have got yourself a variant like this one, fitted with the switchable active sports exhaust that almost all F-Type buyers specify. Now, with this setup, you do run the risk of severely annoying your neighbours with explosive startups on cold, clear mornings, but at least you're not going to be hanging around long enough for them to serve you with an ASBO notice. One of the advantages of the supercharged format is the low down pulling power that it delivers, and sure enough, that's exactly what you get here, with 450 Nm of torque put out by the 340 PS version of this unit and 460 Nm generated by this 380 PS variant. In a quick shift auto gearbox variant, that's enough to see 62 miles an hour dispatched from rest in 5.7 seconds en route to 161 miles an hour in the 340 PS derivative. And those are figures you can improve to 4.9 seconds and 171 miles an hour in this 380 PS version. Not for Jaguar pointless 155 miles an hour speed limiters. Opt for the manual gearbox and you'll have to add a few extra tenths to the acceleration figures I just quoted. That's inevitable, really. I mean, even if you're Fernando Alonso, you won't be able to switch ratios with the speed of the quick shift system. And that is a setup that incidentally you have to have if you're one of the fortunate few who will settle for nothing but one of the 5-litre V8 all-wheel drive only supercharged variants. Now, there are two of those, the 550 PS F-Type R, for which the performance figures are 4.1 seconds and 186 miles an hour, and the wild 575 PS F-Type SVR, which could really worry a bona fide supercar and improves those stats to 3.7 seconds and close to 200 miles an hour. But making this car fast was a very small part of making it great. After all, Jaguar's old XK sports car was certainly quick, but only really ardent fans of the Coventry brand would ever have considered one of those in the same breath as, say, a Porsche 911. Can the F-Type do better? Well, before we originally drove one, we had our doubts, and in some ways actually we still do, although there's certainly lots about the dynamic repertoire of this car that we really like. Well, take the steering, for example. An electrically assisted rack was introduced a couple of years after the original launch, and against expectations, it's turned out to be direct and feelsome, way better than any previous Coventry model in communicating what's actually going on beneath you. Now, equally good is the paddle shift ZF's quick shift auto gearbox. Now true, it does lack modern twin clutch technology, but it's a rapid fire system with 8 closely stacked sporting ratios, optimized to constantly keep the supercharged engines right in the sweet spot of the power band. Activate the standard dynamic mode that's provided with all models and it gets even better, both steering and shifting, taking on an even more aggressive demeanour with a weightier feel at the helm and super fast changes that also adapt themselves to road conditions, cornering and your driving style. At the same time, throttle response is sharper and there's a slight loosening of the stability system safety net. Now if you're in an R dynamic model like this one, then the damping will sharpen up too, and that's thanks to an adaptive dynamic system that controls body movement, roll and pitch. It's well worth having. So it's all good then? Well, not quite. Despite Jaguar's boasts of a lightweight aluminium engineering, the supercharged variants still weigh in at not much less than 1.6 tons, which makes them a lot heavier than rival German brand models. In a V6 or a V8 powered F-Type, you really feel this when you're slinging the car about. Don't get us wrong, this Jaguar can still be a very rewarding car to hustle through a twisting series of bends, but in extremis, it simply doesn't have the sheer agility of a rival Porsche. Sorry, it just doesn't. When it comes to the chassis, there's a limited amount that Jaguar can do to rectify this situation. The underpinnings of this car share much with that old XK model that was originally launched back in 2006, a time in which lightweight chassis technology was a pretty low priority on Coventry's engineering agenda. What the company could do, though, was to install a lighter engine up front, which brings us back to that 2-litre entry-level 4-cylinder variant we mentioned at the beginning. Thanks to its downsized status and much more modern Ingenium technology, it allows the base F-Type derivative to shed 52 kilos in comparison to the V6 variant that we're driving here. And since most of that weight loss comes from the front end, it's something you'll really be able to feel the first time you sling the car into a tight bend at speed. Now, off the record, Jaguar's engineers say that this humblest variant is their preferred F-Type when it comes to handling, and you can see why that might be the case. They've settled on a single engineering spec for the 4-cylinder model, which means you don't get the option of all-wheel drive, which isn't surprising, or manual transmission, which on an entry-level variant rather is. Put off by that? Well, you shouldn't be. Modern era Jaguar sports cars have always been rear-driven auto cog swappers, and arguably they don't really need all-wheel drive. What they do need, though, is an exciting aural soundtrack, and in this regard, the 4-cylinder F-Type is predictably somewhat lacking. And that's despite Jaguar's attempts to improve things in this regard by tuning the exhaust and piping sounds through the stereo speakers. Still, the melody provided is definitely more appealing than the gravelly delivery that you'll hear in a comparable 4-cylinder Porsche 718 Boxster or Cayman. And there's certainly nothing wrong with the way that the turbocharged engine delivers its power. It offers you everything it's got from just 1500 RPM, with the pulling power sweet spot hanging around until 4500 RPM. 62 miles an hour from rest occupies 5.7 seconds en route to 155 miles an hour, so there's very little wrong with the performance stats either. In fact, there's very little wrong with the 2-litre F-Type model in any regard, apart from the rather crucial fact that this 3-litre V6 supercharged variant costs relatively little more, doesn't use much more fuel, and sounds, well, as we just said, glorious. So ultimately, what does it all mean? Have Jaguar really built a world beater here? Well, ultimately that depends what you want. It's worth saying that some of the times we've enjoyed driving this F-Type the most have been when we weren't driving it hard. That's thanks to a suspension setup that eases you over bumpy or broken surfaces, giving the car a beautiful point-to-point flow, whether that's in town or on the highway. No one does this kind of thing better than the engineers at Jaguar. As for track heroics, well, if you want those, then you're probably better off shopping elsewhere. Choose a Lotus or a Porsche if you want a car in this class that'll really make you feel like Fernando Alonso. This Jag is engineered primarily for roadway thrills, although having said that, it would suggest that the V8 versions are almost too fast for the public highway. Most people who can afford one of those are probably going to frighten themselves with it, which is why we think that this V6 route is the better way to go. And by the looks of the sales figures, potential buyers overwhelmingly agree with us. It's said that every piece of design should tell a story. Well, that was certainly true of Jaguar's last proper sports roadster, the E-Type, that was once described by Enzo Ferrari as the world's most beautiful car. So, what would the great man have made of this, its modern-day successor? Well, whether you choose this car in coupe form or in this convertible guise, the shape is certainly interesting. It's a complex mix that references past elegance and future technology, while at the same time also clearly underlining Jaguar's determination to go its own way and offer something different. Its impact has lasted too. Today, Ian Callum's styling still attracts admiring glances, looking as good as it did back at launch in 2013, although that hasn't stopped the brand taking the opportunity to subtly update it. The main aesthetic change with this facelifted model is found here at the front, where large mesh-trimmed single air intakes at each lower corner replace the previous double apertures. Just above those, plusher variants like this one now get more distinctive full LED headlamps, although these do retain the original model's neat J-blade daytime running lights, which also double as directional indicators. Otherwise, apart from a bit of minor bumper chamfering, things are much as before. This muscular clamshell bonnet with its signature power bulge sitting above a bold, angular Jaguar front grille. From the side, it's as you were, the profile distinguished by this so-called heartline crease that runs along the top of the wing, defining its shape, then flowing on into the door before gracefully disappearing rearwards. Now here, you pick up a second heartline, which swells out to form the muscular rear haunches. Distinct lower side sills give the flanks some shape, and this emotive side power vent features further up. The rims are huge, 18 inches as standard, but with 19 or, as in this case, 20-inch alloys also available to even better fill these massive arches. As before, the rear section is emphasised by wraparound LED lamps and an active rear spoiler that raises at 60 miles an hour and then lowers to fit flush like this when the speed drops below 40. Look down here and you can identify the engine on offer with a single tailpipe on the 4-cylinder model, twin centre tailpipes on this V6 and quad outboard mounted exhaust for the V8. While we're here, let's also highlight this Jaguar with considerable width. It's around 120 millimetres wider than both a shorter Porsche 718 model and a longer Porsche 911. This convertible variant's hood is cloth covered, of course, and from start to finish, the mechanism takes just 12 seconds to activate. It's a multi-layered fabric affair with a thick thinsulate lining to make it waterproof. And when it's retracted, the top doesn't need a panel or a tonneau cover to smooth it over in the stowage position. Instead, the top section of the roof itself keeps everything looking tidy. Now, Jaguar's designers never for one moment considered the kind of heavy metal folding roof that you will find in a rival Mercedes SL, which would have upset the low centre of gravity and the near 50-50 weight distribution that the engineers prioritised so much with the advanced aluminium architecture of this design. So, time to grasp one of these lovely pop-out door handles. These are there to provide what Jaguar calls a mechanical handshake and experience this car from within. And the door sills aren't excessively wide or deep, so you can climb in quite gracefully. And lower yourself into a focused, enveloping cockpit that curves itself around your body. Certainly very firmly driver orientated in here. The two front occupants are separated by this prominent grab handle which sweeps down from the top of the centre console and wraps around behind a proper joystick shaped sports shift gear selector. Now, in contrast to other Jaguar models, there's no rotary gear shift controller here, which is as it should be, and it's symptomatic of the design team's determination to create something very different. It's an intimate place where luxury is not allowed to supersede purpose. The main interior change made to this revised model relates to these new ergonomically optimised slimline seats, which now feature lightweight magnesium alloy frames and more supportive backrest bolsters. These chairs come as standard in a sport guise, trimmed in a combination of leather and suede cloth, as they are here, but we'd be tempted to upgrade these to the optional grippier performance seat design, which gives you lovely quilted leather and additional bolstering. Either way, the slimmer profiling allows the seat back to move rearwards by up to 50mm more than before, which in turn enables a lower seating position and increased legroom too. Other changes relate to the centre console trim, and that's available in various styles of aluminium. We've got the Delta style here. Oh, and the paddle shift selectors now have a satin chrome finish, replacing the nasty plastic ones that were fitted before. The cabin's not perfect, of course. We don't think the typical sports car legs straight out driving position will suit everyone. There are some cheaper plastics to be found lower down the dashboard, and if you're used to the kind of occasional use rear child seats that you'll get in a rival Porsche 911, well, you'll be disappointed by the lack of those here. On the plus side though, the toggle switches are really nice, and we like the way that the washer jets are mounted on the wipers to clear a murky screen more effectively. And we also approve of the small diameter 3-spoke leather trimmed steering wheel, which frames a brace of analog instruments, and those are separated by a TFT information screen. Anything you want to know that this can't tell you will probably be covered by the infotainment touchscreen in the centre of the dash. Now, this 8-inch Touch Pro setup is vastly better than the rather outdated system that this model featured at its original launch. Navigation is standard, as are various useful in-control apps, and a 6-speaker 380-watt Meridian sound system with a DAB tuner. Now, fortunately, the designers have resisted the temptation to reduce fascia button clutter by incorporating ventilation controls into this monitor too, so airflow is dealt with by these 3 chunky heater dials that sit just beneath. Talking of climate control, at first glance there don't seem to be many cabin air vents, and that's because 2 of those are hidden away on top of the centre console, and they rise automatically to clear the screen and cool the cabin only when they're needed. They're lovely. A few practicalities to finish. Because you sit so low in the car, the extremities of the bodywork can be quite difficult to see when you're manoeuvring, so we would recommend the optional rear parking camera as a wise investment. As for practicalities, well, you get twin cup holders here and this shallow centre storage bin, but the glove box, that's quite small, and the door pockets aren't very deep either. A 500ml bottle is about all that they can hold. There are no issues with build quality, which is good to be able to report, because this car is entirely British built in the Midlands. The engine's assembled in Wolverhampton and the rest of the car put together in Castle Bromwich. Finally, let's take a look in the boot. Now, you won't be expecting the trunk area of this convertible model to be anything like as accommodating as it is in the F-Type Coupe, and you'll be absolutely right. Total capacity falls from the 407 litre total offered by the fixed-top variant to just 196 litres here. Add in the optional space-saver spare wheel and you really will be tight for space too. In comparison, the rival Porsche 718 Boxster offers a 280 litre capacity. That's thanks to a mid-engine configuration that allows luggage compartments at both ends of the car. On the plus side, with this F-Type, the hood configuration does at least mean that luggage room is unaffected by the position of the roof. It's hard to think of another car on the market with as wide a marketing brief as this F-Type. The sheer scale of the pricing differential from the top to the bottom of the range gives you some idea of that, with buyers offered everything from an entry-level 2-litre derivative priced at around £50,000 to a flagship V8 SVR version that can cost well over £116,000. In between are the supercharged V6 variants that most customers choose, and they're priced in the £55,000 to £80,000 bracket, in which most luxury performance sports cars are sold. As you can see, we're looking at the convertible body style here, which commands a premium of around £5,500 over the equivalent fixed top coupe models. Now, we respect what Jaguar has done in developing a credible 2-litre 4-cylinder engine for this car, but we can't help thinking that if it was our money, the prospect of needing to find only around £2,300 more to graduate from that base engine to this altogether more hourly explosive supercharged V6 would just be too tempting. Now, another advantage in opting for one of the V6 variants is that you'll then get a lot more choice about the way you can specify the engineering aspects of your car. After all, the 4-cylinder and the V8 power models only come with automatic transmission and a single drivetrain format. So with the 2-litre derivatives, it's rear-wheel drive. With the V8 variants, it's all-wheel drive. Go for the V6 though, and it's very different. There's a classic manual gearbox option that'll save you around £1,800 if you don't fancy the 8-speed quick-shift automatic. Around 95% of buyers though are understandably really quite happy with the auto, and if you're one of those and you have been able to avoid the base 340 PS V6 unit, then you'll be offered the chance to spend around £5,000 more on an all-wheel drive system, and you'll be glad of that when the winter sets in. What else might you need to know? Well, we just referenced the fact that there's a choice of power outputs with the V6 engine, with a premium of just over £3,000 necessary to go from the standard 340 PS unit to the uprated 380 PS variant that we're trying here. Now, in order to choose this pokier variant, you've also got to have committed to the extra £3,700 necessary to move from standard to R dynamic spec. Now, that's what we've got here, and it's a trim upgrade option that your dealer will urge you to take if you're looking at one of the volume 4-cylinder and V6 models. All this adds up though to the point where you're probably going to be needing to fund an asking price somewhere in the £65,000 to £70,000 bracket for a typical 3-litre V6 R dynamic variant like this one. Plus, of course, there are plenty of opportunities to spend even more. Now, at the launch of this facelifted F-Type model in early 2017, Jaguar also added a third 400 PS V6 power output option, and that was packaged with a more luxurious sport level of spec that aimed to justify a much higher asking price, starting from just over £70,000. Beyond that, there are only the V8 all-wheel driven variants, which start at around £90,000 for the 550 PS F-Type R model, and culminate with the 6-figure sums necessary for the flagship 575 PS SVR variant we mentioned earlier. Okay, enough on the range, on to the value proposition those prices represent. Now, the most affordable 2-litre 4-cylinder F-Type models serve those who want something a little nicer and more exclusive than, say, a comparably powerful Audi TTS or Ford Mustang, and who are prepared to pay around £5,000 to £10,000 more to get it. If you'd like an F-Type V6, you'll want at least a £55,000 budget, in which case the kind of competitors that you're likely to be looking at will be more sophisticated. Cars like Alfa Romeo's 4C, the various Porsche 718 Cayman and Boxster variants, maybe also an Audi TT RS, BMW M4, or the Mercedes-AMG C63 or SLC 43 models. Now, you can see why this Jaguar might represent a more special selection to many owners than any of those potential competitors. Go for a really powerful F-Type V6 with almost everything on it, a car like this one for example, or perhaps the 550 PS F-Type R V8, and price-wise you're going to be in Porsche 911 territory. Alternatively, you'll be spending the kind of money that would otherwise have entitled you to start looking at luxury sports cars of the calibre of Mercedes SL. The top 575 PS F-Type SVR, well, that gets you into lottery-winning territory, and it's an intended alternative to pricier Maserati Grand Cabrio models, or maybe an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, or a lower-order Mercedes-AMG GT. So if, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is an F-Type that you really want, then you'll be needing to know exactly what's included for your not insubstantial outlay. Well, the answer is quite a lot. Although, for the money being asked here, we would have expected that base level trim might have included features like keyless entry, 2-zone climate control and heated seats, all of those things being optional. Otherwise though, most of what you could want does come as standard, and that includes of course this convertible model's power folding fabric hood, and that comes in grey, red or beige as a no cost option if you don't like this standard black. Nor does Jaguar make you pay extra for one other essential that's needed with almost any open-top model, a wind deflector that reduces buffeting when the top's down. The entry-level point in the range will also get you 18-inch 10-spoke alloy wheels, an active sports exhaust, xenon headlamps, and they have LED signature daytime running lights, a deployable boot lid spoiler, LED tail lamps, heated mirrors, rear parking sensors, rain sensing wipers and an alarm. Inside there are sports seats trimmed in leather and suede cloth that feature electric height and recline adjustment, plus there's an auto dimming rear view mirror, there's cruise control with a speed limiter and powered adjustment for the leather trimmed steering wheel. In addition, you get a dynamic driving mode that sharpens the throttle and steering response for the kind of press on driving, which will highlight the benefit of the torque vectoring system, which will help you to get all that prodigious power down through the corners. As for infotainment, well, there's much the same Touch Pro system common across the range. The setup works from an 8-inch center dash touchscreen, and it includes navigation, it includes Bluetooth connectivity, USB and 12-volt ports, access to various useful in-control apps, and a 6-speaker 380-watt Meridian sound system with a DAB tuner. The setup also includes online services such as real-time traffic readouts and live weather reports. With all F-Type models, throughout the 3-year warranty period, you additionally get the use of Jaguar's clever remote premium app that allows you to use your smartphone for things like checking how much fuel is in your tank, whether the windows are closed, and also whether the alarm's been activated. Now this will also allow you to remotely lock or unlock your car and reset its alarm from anywhere in the world. And there's also a beep and flash feature to help drivers to find their car in crowded car parks. Now with this app, you can even start the engine remotely so that, for example, you can get the car warming itself up nicely outside your front door before your journey begins. Talking of apps, you can also add in another one to any F-Type, the brilliant Rerun app that Jaguar's developed with GoPro. Add in a GoPro camera to your car and the app will automatically combine the resulting real-time footage with key vehicle performance data, including speed, throttle position, gear selection, braking force and G-force. The resulting high-quality video can then be downloaded onto your smartphone and, if you wish, shared across social media. Okay, so that's all the standard stuff covered. Is it worth progressing up the range and getting that R-Dynamic trim upgrade we mentioned earlier, the one that the majority of buyers of the volume 4-cylinder and V6 models sign up for? Well, quite possibly. After all, the R-Dynamic package gets you 3 key features you'll probably want: the Adaptive Dynamics variable damping system, the throatier switchable active exhaust, and the larger, more eye-catching 19-inch split-spoke alloy wheels. If you get yourself one of the pokier V6 models, this package also includes a mechanical limited slip differential and black brake calipers. Now, for those fortunate enough to be able to graduate further up the lineup and get themselves V8 power with the desirable F-Type RV8, that limited slip diff becomes electronically activated. Plus, with this variant, you get quad exhausts, even bigger 20-inch wheels, and a configurable dynamic mode that allows you to set up your preferences with regard to throttle, steering, and suspension feel in just the same way as a professional driver would set up his race car. At this level, you also get full LED headlamps, power folding mirrors, and embossed electrically operated R-Performance seats with full Windsor leather trim. There's really not much else that the flagship V8 SVR variant can add to this tally, although you do get front parking sensors and a carbon fibre rear wing. Now let's have a look at the various options you could add on to F-Type models across the lineup. With the most popular standard and R-Dynamic models, typical buyers frequently pay extra for features like the grippier performance seats, metal pedals and full leather trim, as well as the keyless entry option that we mentioned earlier. Over-the-shoulder vision isn't great in this car, so we would recommend that you invest in a rear view camera, and if you want it, there's also a park assist system which will automatically steer you into spaces. Other less crucial extras you might want to consider include things like 2-zone climate control, a heated steering wheel, a heated windscreen and heated front seats that can also be cooled and ventilated, all items that can be ordered separately or more affordably together as part of a couple of climate packs. Now the same goes for fully powered seats and power folding mirrors. They can come bundled up with various memory functions as part of a couple of seat memory packs. Other individual extras that you might want to look at, they include a powered boot lid, front parking sensors, configurable ambient lighting and a thumping 770 watt upgraded Meridian surround sound system. Wise buyers might also want to add in a space-saver spare wheel and a vehicle tracking system in case of theft. And ardent track warriors with bottomless budgets might want to look at the very pricey option of ceramic brakes. As a more affordable alternative, those folk might want to consider the bigger discs of the uprated Jaguar super performance braking system, although on the 4-cylinder model you can't have that if you stick with the standard 18-inch wheels. On to aesthetics. Now, unless you order your F-Type in one of the 3 solid paint colours available, red, black or white, you're going to be paying extra for paintwork. There's a wide range of metallic shades, plus there are some even more exclusive but very expensive premium colours, like this car's Carpathian grey finish. You might also want to look at one of the optional styling packs that can add either body colour, a carbon fibre finish or mean looking gloss black treatment to areas like the front bumper splitter, the side sills and the rear venturi. A fixed rear spoiler is also optional, and buyers of the coupe body style can also specify a panoramic glass roof, or alternatively a roof panel fashioned purely from carbon fibre. The rear diffuser and the engine cover can be specified in carbon fibre too. Plus there's a choice of 3 trimming options for the bonnet louvres, the mirror covers and the side power vents. These are gloss black, chrome or, yes, you've guessed it, carbon fibre. On a convertible model like this one, you also get the same trimming options for the roll hoops, and the front grille surround can be finished in gloss black if you think that looks meaner. What about the cabin of your F-Type? How can you make that your own? Well, there's a vast range of seat trimming choices, but beyond that, one option might be to add extra leather around the interior. The extended leather pack adds extra hide onto the sun visors or the headlining, or if you like the feel of suede cloth, then you can get these areas trimmed in that instead. If you were looking at the full leather seat upholstery option we mentioned earlier, then you might want to get that as part of the premium leather interior pack, which extends that finish onto the door trim and the dash, as well as the 2 chairs. Red stitched tan coloured leather option is additionally available too. Again, all these areas can also be fully covered in suede cloth as an alternative. Now, we'll also mention that there's an interior black pack that adds gloss black to the instrument cluster dial rings, the door releases and the air vent surrounds, while additionally giving you a flat bottom steering wheel with black spokes. Other cabin extras that we would potentially be tempted by include red seat belts, illuminated door sill tread plates, sports carpet mats and a lovely race style SVR branded suede cloth steering wheel. Enough on options, let's move on to this car's safety provision, something Jaguar has moved to improve in this facelifted model. Now the main addition is an emergency braking system, one of those that uses a camera to scan the road ahead as you drive in search of potential accident hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond, or perhaps you aren't able to, then the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. An additional pedestrian contact sensing feature particularly monitors folk on the pavement who might be about to step out in front of you. Another addition is a lane departure warning system, which alerts you if you drift out of your lane at highway speeds. In addition, should you be involved in an accident, then the car's integrated telematics module will automatically call the emergency services and notify them of your vehicle's location. Otherwise, the standard safety features on offer are of the more conventional variety. This convertible model gets the usual rollover protection system and 4 smart airbags. There are 6 in the coupe variant, and all models get tyre pressure monitoring, the usual electronic assistance for traction and braking, and an electronic stability control system with a track mode that loosens the reins but which cuts in extremis. Plus, if you wish, you can also add in a high beam assist system that'll automatically dip your headlights for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. If you want more, then your dealer will encourage you to consider the optional drive pack that adds 5 further features. A blind spot monitoring system works on the move to stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another vehicle. Reverse traffic detection. Now this will warn you about oncoming vehicles when you're reversing blindly out of a parking space. There's a driver condition monitor, which monitors your driving reactions for drowsiness. There's lane keep assist, which can subtly steer you back into lane on the highway if you drift out of it. And finally, there's traffic sign recognition, which can picture road signs as you pass them, display them on the dash, and can automatically set the car's standard speed limiter to maintain the signed limit. All of these items can be ordered separately if you'd rather not buy into the full drive pack. So, to the costs of running this car, which are going to take on some significance if you're one of those who'll have to stretch a little deeper than might have been expected to afford an F-Type in the first place. Now, this isn't, after all, the value proposition its predecessor, the E-Type, once was. That car cost around £2,000 when it was launched back in 1961, and that equates to around £36,000 today. That's around half the cost of F-Types that'll typically be rolling out of British showrooms. But there's no point in dwelling on that. The market's moved on, and Jaguar is entitled to charge the way the Germans do, providing it can match their technology, of course. In terms of efficiency, you might wonder about that, as you might have expected to if you know anything at all about big capacity supercharged petrol engines of the kind that most models in the F-Type lineup use. They're normally thirsty beasts, and the 3-litre V6 and 5-litre V8 units on offer here are no exception to that rule. Now, we'll get to the way they perform in efficiency terms in a minute, but first let's focus on the one power plant in the lineup that ought not to be hobbled by questionable standards of running cost efficiency, and that's the entry-level 4-cylinder 2-litre turbocharger unit. This twin-turbo i4 300 Ingenium engine is one that Jaguar is extremely proud of, with an exhaust manifold integrated into the cylinder head, low levels of friction, and a whole range of other engineering measures, all designed to promote efficiency. A late intake valve opening design improves operating efficiency from a cold start, and what Jaguar calls an early intake valve closing strategy aims to do the same thing on part throttle loads. On top of that, the base model enjoys a significant weight saving of 52 kilos over this V6 variant, although that would probably count for more if it were not for the fact that the F-Type wasn't such a relatively heavy thing. Most optioned up variants leaving the showroom with a curb weight of around 1.6 tonnes, and that is a lot for a modern 2-seater sports car, and it's around 150 kilos heavier than some of this model's German rivals, a Porsche 718 Cayman S, for example. Even though we knew that going into this test, we still expected that all the clever, ingenious technology would translate into slightly more of an efficiency gain over the supercharged V6 unit. As it is, Jaguar claims a 16% boost in economy if you're minded to compare a 4-cylinder F-Type with a comparable auto V6, which translates into 39.2 mpg on the combined cycle. Now, that's a figure that will see you able to travel about 5 miles further on every gallon in a 2-litre model than you would be able to in a comparable 340 PS V6 auto variant. Perhaps more significantly, the 4-cylinder derivative's emissions figure is 163 grams per kilometre of CO2, a reading that, perhaps the first time in many cases, may make the F-Type a realistic company car option for some business users. One slight annoyance is that for the 2-litre turbo variant, Jaguar has reduced the size of the fuel tank from 70 to 63 gallons. So if you've traded down from a V6, you'll probably find yourself having to refill the car just as frequently as you did before. Having said that, a 500-mile driving range should still be possible between filling stations. As you may have seen elsewhere in this film, the 2-litre variant comes only with automatic transmission, and one reason for that is that Jaguar knows that equipping the base version with a stick shift would mask many of its efficiency gains. Get a perspective on this by looking at the way the transmission choice affects the running costs of the 3-litre V6 340 model. Go for it with the auto box and the figures are 33.6 mpg on the combined cycle and 199 grams per kilometre of CO2. In your manual form though, the same car's readings crashed to 28.8 mpg and 234 grams per kilometre. No wonder only 5% of F-Type buyers want a conventional gear shift. There's not much of an efficiency penalty if you opt for the pokier 380 PS version of the V6 engine. That's the one we've been trying here. With a manual gearbox, the readings stay the same, while with an auto, they fall only fractionally to 32 miles per gallon and 203 grams per kilometre. If in a V6 380 PS model you mate auto transmission with all-wheel drive, the readings fall only fractionally to 31.7 miles per gallon and 211 grams per kilometre. If you've set your heart on an F-Type V8, you'll be expecting cleanliness and frugality to take a bit of a dive, and you'll be absolutely right. The combination of a 5-litre supercharged engine, auto transmission and all-wheel drive is never going to translate into a car that would please the friends of the earth. And sure enough, for both the F-Type R and the F-Type SVR variants, the figures delivered will get you on very friendly terms with the staff at your local filling station, and we'll see you doing a double take when your tax return comes in. We're talking 25 miles per gallon and 269 grams per kilometre. In terms of across the range segment comparisons, you'll find all the readings we quoted significantly inferior to those you could get from rival Porsche and Mercedes models. Still, if you are looking at one of the supercharged F-Type variants, you could make yourself feel a little better about this car's efficiency showing by comparing it to the frankly awful readings returned by old tech rivals like Maserati's GT or Aston Martin's V8 Vantage. Those are sports cars that'll cost you about 30% more to run than this one. Features like a start-stop system and EPAS electric power steering help this Jaguar here. It's also worth pointing out that there's no efficiency penalty whatsoever for opting for this convertible body style rather than the equivalent coupe, despite this drop-top's 20-kilo increase in weight. And of course, as with any proper performance sports car, if you manage to get anywhere near the manufacturer's quoted figures in regular real-world motoring, well, you probably shouldn't have bought the thing in the first place. What else? Well, your insurance premium is another thing that's going to hit you hard in the wallet region as part of running this car. All V6 and V8 variants are rated at top of the shop group 50, which would be easier to bear were it not for the fact that some significant rivals are rated considerably lower. A Porsche 718 Boxster S, for example, is rated at group 43. At least the predicted residual values are a bit more encouraging. If we take the 2-litre convertible as an example, you expect to get 45% of your original purchase price back after the usual industry standard 3-year, 30,000 mile ownership period. That figure, by the way, rises to 50% if you opt for the more desirable R-Dynamic trim, which would offset much of the cost of trading up to that plusher spec level at point of purchase. In other words, Jaguar depreciation is very much a match for that of, say, Porsche, which is quite an achievement. Like all Jaguar models, this one comes with a standard 3-year warranty, although here, unlike some rivals, there's no cap on the number of miles you can cover in that period. You can pay a relatively small premium to extend the coverage period to 5 years if you wish. Then there's the issue of maintenance. Jaguar offers a servicing package that's very well worth specifying. A 3-year deal for around £1,000 or a 5-year high mileage scheme for around £1,500. Now that does sound like a lot, but it'll make the maintenance side of running this car more cost effective than would be the case with owning a rival Porsche model, even though the Zuffenhausen's brand's models only need to visit a dealer every 2 years rather than annually. And finally, if you want to justify your purchase of a luxury petrol-powered Jaguar sports car to green-bearded friends, then you could point out to them that half the content of the bodywork of this car comes from recycled metal, and that its structure is exclusively riveted and bonded, and that's a manufacturing process that emits up to 80% less CO2 than would be necessary in the creation of an ordinary car's steel structure. There are, it seems, more dynamic ways to be green. It's hard not to have preconceptions about what this Jaguar might be like, especially if you're the kind of buyer who might ordinarily prefer a German branded sports car. Now, we came to this test with just such a preference, but we've ended it understanding afresh just why this F-Type is such an appealing prospect. Of course, it's asking a lot for one model to straddle so many different sports car segments. At one end of the range, the 2-litre derivative could be an alternative to cars as relatively affordable as a well-specified Audi TTS. At the other, the flagship SVR version has the performance to worry a McLaren. While in the middle of the lineup, this potent V6 variant battles Porsche's iconic 911. Now, back at this car's original launch, we'd worried that Jaguar might have spread the F-Type's talents a little too thinly in attempting to compete with so diverse a range of rivals. Having examined the way this car's evolved, though, we're now far more convinced that it can meet its maker's aspirations. It's certainly hard to see how the Coventry company could have developed this model more effectively. Back at its original launch, you could have griped about the lack of all-wheel drive or a manual gearbox, plus maybe the clunky infotainment system and the absence of a more affordable entry-level variant, but all that's now been sorted. So, are there any remaining issues? Well, luggage capacity in this convertible model, that's quite restricted, and the car could and should be a little lighter than it is, which is one reason why the V6 and the V8 versions can't match the efficiency figures delivered by German rivals. Otherwise, there's really not a lot to complain about. This really is a British sports car to be proud of. True, it won't match a rival Porsche model's delicacy of response at the limit, but in compensation, you get yourself a car that's arguably better looking, unarguably better equipped, more powerful, and endowed with a greater sense of occasion inside and out. Plus, it steers, handles, stops, goes, and sounds exactly like a Jaguar sports car should. But don't knock it because it's not a Boxster or a 911. The F-Type was never intended to be like anything else. This model's different, powerful, sensual, ultra precise. It's a car that feels alive. Jaguar needed to find a younger, more demanding, hungrier audience for its sports cars. It needed to convince people like us that here and now, in this market, at this time in history, it could be great again. Mission accomplished.